Well, my name is Galen Lim. I'm the missions director for the church, and Pastor asked me to do a wrap-up testimony for Summer of Serving. But before I get to my own testimony, I just have to say, Brother David, I was looking forward to hearing about some of the things from Dream Center, and this is the first time we went there, and I was just really touched by your testimony. David and I go back a long way. We've been friends a long time in the church. We are girl dads unite, and we got to raise our daughters here at the garden. And most amazingly, we now get to see our daughters actually serving and going on missions together. As dads, we couldn't be prouder of that. And if you saw the testimonies last night, Ashlyn Rose, David's daughter, and she's testifying, and I get to see them serving with my daughters. And we're so touched, by seeing that. But God bless you, brother. Last year, if you remember, we went to Mexico together, and David was up here, and he gave his testimony last year, too. And I also gave a sort of testimony as well. So if you were to ask me, hey, Galen, a year later, you're going to be back on stage, and so is David. We're going to talk about the summer of 2020 and everything that went down this year. There's no way I could have anticipated, imagined, my wildest dreams, the things that were going to happen this year. Both all the pandemic, when you talk about racial injustice, when you're talking about the presidential campaign and the elections and all these things that are happening is just so crazy right now. But I go back, I want to rewind the clock back to January when Pastor gave his first message. You know that he releases his theme for the year. And the theme for the year for 2020 was a year of serving others. And when I first heard it roll off his tongue, I was like, oh, what happened to the year of belong? I like the belong. That's kind of my thing, is belong. When year of serving came about, I was like, okay, we got to get ready for a year of serving. We started getting into it, and then COVID hits. Okay, and a month goes by, we think it's going to clear up. It hasn't cleared up. And this was a year that Pastor had also asked me to pray about being the missions director for the church. So we're starting to plan missions, we're getting everybody together, and then one by one, each of the missions are being canceled. Especially if you think about the overseas trips, those are not possible. Those had to be canceled because you have to make reservations way ahead of time. One by one, and Mexico was the last leg, of missions, and I was hoping, maybe we could still go, but that also was canceled. So I was like, okay, Lord, you have it, your way. We're going to cancel all the missions. We'll just wait till next year. And then I got a text from Pastor David saying, hey, this is a year of serving others, and I think maybe we need to start thinking about how are we going to do this kind of for our local community. Okay, and you started seeing things on TV like food banks and people coming, and we thought maybe we could do some sort of like food pickup, at our church. We had just started the food box with Children's Hunger Fund. We did the Service Senior. So we thought maybe we could do a bigger one of those. But as you know, God had a different plan. Okay, so we started getting the leaders together. We started doing some brainstorming. And I remember Pastor Sharon said, you know what? I want us to just take the cover off, just be as creative as can be. Let's think of some really out-of-the-box, ideas. Nothing's off the table. So we started thinking, brainstorming. There's a lot of ideas that came out. And honestly, to myself, I was thinking, I don't know, some of those are just not going to work. But what God showed me was it didn't matter what I thought. His plan was already moving. His plan was already taken off, and he was just asking us to get on board, with that. So last night, if you're here for Missions Praise Night, we got to celebrate together 11 amazing, beautiful missions, just that God was able to bring us to the finish line. And he protected us. He helped us. He allowed us to be a blessing to the community. And as you heard from the testimonies, so many of us, as usual, we're the ones that get blessed by doing that, right? And there's so many stories that, in addition to the testimonies that are out there, some you heard through, last night, but a lot of them you'll never hear because you really just had to be there. But I'm going to share with you kind of my favorite kind of story that you probably haven't heard of. And what the story is actually from the gym team. Okay, so they did Camp City, as you heard last night. What they did was a mini VBS at the Shepherd House. And at the Shepherd House, they ministered through Zoom. So they arranged kind of a daily, 2-hour, like a mini VBS where they had ukulele lessons. They had cooking lessons. They had all sorts of things going on, just one by one, just lined up. And I thought, wow, how are they going to do that? And one of the things that they had really planned to do was a gospel class. Okay, and this is one of the things that we had really prayed over as a team, because this is one of the few opportunities to actually give the gospel. So I was kind of eavesdropping on one of their kind of team meetings as they were getting ready to give the gospel, and they're going through the script, they're reading their lines, and then at the end of that, one of the kids says, "What if nobody raises their hand? What if nobody responds?" And, that question really stuck with me. It stuck with me. I'm thinking about all the summer of serving. What if nobody raises their hands? What if no one responds to what we do? What if nobody cares? Are we wasting our time? And as I was just thinking about that question, in Joshua 1:8, recently we've been in Colossians, and Colossians 3:23 says, "Whatever you do with all your heart as if working for the Lord, not man." Okay, so we're working for the Lord. And in the Passion Translation says, "Put your heart and soul into every activity you do, as though you are doing it for the Lord himself and not merely for others." Okay, so we didn't set out to do summer serve missions to love and serve our community to get a response. We didn't do it to get any sort of thank you. What we did is all we needed to do was just obey what God commanded us to do. At the beginning of 2020, serve others. That's our mission. And I believe that we did that. And I would say that sometimes God allows us to also see the harvest as well. So going back to my Camp City story, the gospel team was ready to go on. They're ready to share with the kids. And I'll just share that the presenter of the gospel that morning was Matthew Lim. And I actually asked for permission from him to share his story. So thank you, Matthew, if you're listening. Thank you for letting me share this. But he gave the gospel, and he followed the script. And at the end of the message, he said, "Okay, now if anybody wants to accept Jesus, raise your hand." And if you saw the video last night, kids started to raise their hands. And I think maybe it took him a little bit by surprise. The response was so genuine. It was so awesome. It was really just touched my heart. He's like, "Oh, cool. You're raising your hands. Okay. So now let's follow me in this prayer." And he led them to Christ. So, Matthew, thank you for doing that. And I'm just going to show kind of my next slide here. These are the names of the kids that accepted Christ that day. Okay, so we have Natalia, Nylan, Kylan, Anthony, Genesis. So if you ask me, is Summer of Serve, is it worth it? Yes, absolutely it's worth it. These 5 names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. It's so worth what we did. Every effort, everything that we did, so worth it, okay? But let me ask you another question. Go to the next slide. What if only one person raised their hand? Is that still worth it? And I would say, yes, absolutely it is worth it. Go to the next slide. And Pastor, I heard your message from last week, and it was right on point, because when you talk about the 99 and the one that was lost and going after the one, when they found the one, there was a party in heaven because the one that was lost was found. Okay, so Kylan, the rest of the 5 kids, all of those is just so worth it. Okay? Now, finally, let me go to my next slide. What if nobody raised their hand? What if nobody responded? What if there was nothing? And the answer to that is yes, it's still absolutely worth it. Because when we go back to the verse that I was telling you about, which is on the next slide, so whatever you do, put your heart and soul into every activity you do as though you are doing it for the Lord himself. That's what he commands us to do. And the next verse is God himself. God himself is our very great reward. So Summer Serve, just amazing. I believe that every team member, every leader, everybody put their heart and soul into this mission that God gave us. And I'm just so blessed. I'm so thankful. I'm so proud to be a member of this church and to be part of Summer Serve. I miss you. God bless you. We'll see you soon.